Me 7. Somewhere in my mid-20s, earning a living in tech and not actively on fire. Life's in maintenance mode. Rent paid, fridge stocked, future vaguely planned. I'm not chasing every invite, but I'm also not hiding from the world. A tight handful of friends, a couple time-sink hobbies, enough routine to keep the chaos out. Most days pass quietly, almost on autopilot. Then I meet Maya. It was through a mutual acquaintance at some casual get-together. We just started talking, and it was easy. She was sharp, funny, and incredibly passionate about her beliefs. You know that feeling when you just click with someone? It was like that. The conversation flowed without any awkward pauses. We talked for what felt like hours, pretty much ignoring everyone else. She had this energy about her, like she was always switched on, always thinking about something deep. I found it magnetic. We exchanged numbers, and I didn't think much of it. Figured it might just be a one-time thing. But she texted me the next day. We went out for coffee a few days later. That coffee turned into a long walk, which turned into us grabbing dinner. I was genuinely impressed. She wasn't like other girls I'd dated who seemed to have no opinion on anything. Maya had an opinion on everything, and she could back it up, or at least she spoke with so much conviction that it sounded like she could. We started seeing each other regularly. The first couple of months were honestly great. It felt like a real partnership. We'd go hiking, try new restaurants, binge-watch shows, all the normal relationship stuff. She was affectionate, seemed to genuinely care about my day, my work, my stupid little problems. I really thought I'd found someone special. The first signs that something was different began subtly. It started with her social media. She'd post these long, rambling thoughts about society, relationships, and the patriarchy. Stuff like, monogamy is a construct designed to control female autonomy, or jealousy is the emotional manifestation of ownership, a toxic remnant of patriarchal conditioning. At first, I just scrolled past it, figured it was just abstract intellectual stuff, the kind of things people post to sound smart. It didn't seem to have any bearing on our actual relationship. She was still the same Maya with me in person, so I ignored it. Big mistake. The first time her online persona bled into our real life was at a coffee shop. It was a lazy afternoon. We were just chilling, enjoying the quiet time. The guy behind the counter, the barista, was one of those hipster-looking dudes with a meticulously styled beard and tattoos up his arms. Maya went up to get us refills. I was just reading something on my phone, not paying much attention. But then I noticed she was gone for a while. I looked up. She was leaning against the counter, laughing at something the barista was saying. Not just a polite laugh, a full-on, head-tilted back, touching his arm laugh. He was clearly eating it up, leaning in, smiling this big, smarmy grin. It wasn't a quick interaction. It went on for a good 5 or 6 minutes. It felt less like a customer talking to a barista and more like a girl at a bar talking to a guy she was interested in. I felt this knot forming in my stomach. It was this weird mix of confusion and embarrassment. She finally came back to the table, smiling, holding our coffees. She didn't seem to think anything was weird about it at all. I waited a bit, tried to approach it calmly later on. I said something like, "Hey, you seem to be getting along really well with that barista." Her entire demeanor changed. The warm smile vanished. She put her cup down and looked at me with this analytical, almost clinical expression. She told me she was just being friendly. I tried to explain that it looked like more than just friendly, that it made me a bit uncomfortable. That's when I got the first lecture. It was like she had a script prepared. She said that my discomfort was a product of toxic masculinity, that I was trying to exert a sense of ownership over her, that her ability to have a positive, friendly interaction with another man shouldn't threaten my ego. She used the term asserting my independence. She explained that in a healthy, progressive relationship, both partners should feel free to be their full social selves without fear of the other's insecurity. I was floored. It was such a bizarre academic way to describe what looked like blatant flirting. She completely turned it around on me. Suddenly, I was the one with the problem. I was the insecure, controlling boyfriend. She was the enlightened, independent woman. What could I even say to that? If I argued, I was just proving her point that I was toxic. So I dropped it. I just mumbled, okay, and we moved on. But it didn't feel okay. It felt deeply, fundamentally wrong. I thought maybe it was a one-off thing, a weird moment. It wasn't. It became a pattern. We'd be at a bookstore, and she'd strike up an overly friendly conversation with the guy working there, asking for his personal recommendations, laughing way too hard at his jokes. If I looked uncomfortable, I'd get the look. We'd be at the grocery store, and she'd start a whole conversation with some random dude in the aisle about the merits of organic kale, and it would somehow end with them exchanging smiles that lingered for just a little too long. Each time, it was the same dynamic. She would engage in behavior that any normal person would call flirting. If I ever dared to bring it up, even in the gentlest way possible, the intellectual fortress walls would go up. I was being possessive. I was perpetuating patriarchal norms. I needed to examine my own insecurities instead of trying to police her behavior. It was masterful, in a way. She had created a perfect shield for her actions, built out of buzzwords and accusations that made me the bad guy for having a perfectly normal human reaction. It started messing with my head. I began to second-guess myself constantly. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just some insecure caveman who couldn't handle his girlfriend talking to other men. I really tried to see it from her perspective. I tried to be more progressive, more enlightened. I'd see her talking to some guy, and I'd just bite my tongue, telling myself that I was being irrational. But it never felt right. It felt like disrespect, plain and simple. It felt like she was getting a thrill from it, from exercising this freedom right in front of my face. The worst part was that our relationship was otherwise fine. When it was just the two of us, she could be incredibly sweet and caring. It was this constant Jekyll and Hyde thing, the loving girlfriend one moment, and this cold, calculating social theorist the next. The tipping point came a few months into this new normal. We were invited to a party at a friend's apartment. I was actually looking forward to it. A chance to just relax, see some familiar faces, maybe feel like a normal couple for a night. We arrived, and for the first half hour, things were fine. We mingled together, grabbed drinks, talked to people we knew. Then, Maya spotted a guy across the room. I'd never seen him before. He was tall, confident-looking, the center of a small group of people. She just said, "I'll be right back," and walked over to his circle. I watched as she just inserted herself into their conversation. Within minutes, the rest of the circle had kind of faded away, and it was just the two of them, talking. And it was just like the coffee shop, but amplified by 100. The body language was undeniable. She was playing with her hair. She was leaning in so close their shoulders were almost touching. She was looking up at him through her eyelashes. It was a scene straight out of a romantic comedy, and I was standing 20 feet away holding 2 plastic cups, watching it all happen. It wasn't a quick chat. It went on for the entire night. I'm not exaggerating. For over 2 hours, she was glued to this guy's side. I tried to distract myself. I talked to my friends, tried to get into other conversations, but my eyes just kept drifting back to them. I felt like a complete and utter fool. It was public. My friends saw it. They would look at me, then look at her, then look back at me with this pitying expression. No one said anything to me, which almost made it worse. The silence was deafening. It was the most profoundly humiliating experience of my life. At one point, I walked past them to get to the bathroom. I heard a snippet of their conversation. He was telling some story, and she was hanging on his every word, her eyes wide with admiration. She saw me walk by. Our eyes met for a split second. There was no guilt in her expression, no oops, got caught look. It was something else, a flicker of defiance, a challenge, like she was daring me to say something. That's when I understood. This wasn't about independence or deconstructing norms. This was about power. She was enjoying this. She was enjoying putting me in this position, proving that she could do whatever she wanted and that I was powerless to stop it without looking like the toxic boyfriend. Finally, near the end of the night, she came back over to me, her face flushed and smiling. She said, "Ready to go?" As if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just spent the entire evening emotionally attached to another man's hip. The car ride home was silent. I couldn't even bring myself to look at her. I was just stewing in this potent cocktail of anger, hurt, and shame. When we got back to my place, I knew I had to say something. I couldn't just let this go. I confronted her. I wasn't yelling, but my voice was shaking. I told her how it felt to watch that, how humiliating it was. I asked her who that guy was, what they were talking about for so long. And the lecture began. It was the standard script, but this time it was delivered with an air of annoyance, like she was tired of having to explain these simple concepts to her primitive boyfriend. She said his name was something generic, that he was interesting, and that they were having a stimulating conversation. She said my jealousy was unattractive, and that I had ruined a perfectly good night with my moodiness. She actually said I had main character syndrome, and couldn't stand it when the world didn't revolve around me for a few hours. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The hurt and confusion just evaporated, and all that was left was cold, hard clarity. I saw the whole thing for what it was, a game, a one-sided game where she made all the rules, and I was only allowed to lose. I didn't argue anymore. I just went quiet. She took my silence as agreement, as me finally understanding her superior point of view. She started talking about other things, trying to get back to normal. I just gave one-word answers. She eventually went to bed, probably thinking she had won another philosophical victory. I stayed up all night, just sitting on my couch in the dark. I felt completely broken. I had tried so hard to be a good boyfriend, to be understanding, to be modern and open-minded, and what I got in return was public humiliation dressed up as a social justice lesson. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of hopelessness. I met up with my best friend. He's one of those no-nonsense, brutally honest types. I told him everything. The coffee shop, the bookstore, the party. I even told him about the lectures, the buzzwords, the way she turned everything around on me. I think I was expecting him to sympathize, to tell me I should just break up with her. But he just listened patiently, nodding along. When I was finished, he was quiet for a minute. Then he looked at me and said something that changed everything. He said, "So, she's established a set of rules for your relationship, right? The core rule is that interacting in a friendly, even flirty, way with the opposite sex is not only acceptable, but is a positive expression of personal freedom." I just nodded, confused where he was going with this. He continued, "She believes this rule applies to her. The question is, does she believe it applies to you?" A light bulb went on in my head. He spelled it out for me. She's built this entire ideological framework to justify her behavior. It's all based on principles of equality and breaking down old-fashioned toxic norms, right? I said, "Yeah, that's what she says." He leaned in. "Then you have to see if those principles actually mean anything to her. The only way to do that is to apply the same rules to yourself. You have to use her logic, her exact framework, and see how she reacts when the roles are reversed." He wasn't suggesting I go cheat on her or be a jerk. He was suggesting a scientific experiment, a social experiment to test the integrity of her entire belief system. He told me, "Don't be a hypocrite yourself. Don't actually go try to hook up with someone. Just have a friendly, stimulating conversation, the exact same thing she does, in public, and make sure she sees it." It was a terrifying idea, but it was also brilliant. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. Was she a genuine believer in this new, enlightened form of relationship, or was she just a massive hypocrite using a convenient philosophy as a cover for her own selfish behavior? There was only one way to find out. I spent the next few days thinking about it. The idea grew on me. It felt like the only way out of this mental prison she had built for me. I had to know. So I started planning. I knew exactly who to call. There was this girl, Jenna. We weren't super close, but we had been friends for years. We'd worked together at a summer job a long time ago and just stayed in touch. Jenna was the most normal, down-to-earth person I knew. She was kind, smart, and completely drama-free. The absolute opposite of Maya in almost every way. She was the perfect control group. I crafted the text carefully. Just a casual, "Hey Jenna, it's been forever. How have you been? Would be great to catch up sometime if you're free." She replied almost immediately, saying she'd love to. We set a time to meet for coffee later that week. The final piece of the puzzle was the location. It had to be somewhere Maya would see us. There was a coffee shop right on the corner of the main street she always walked down on her way home from her classes. It was perfect. As the day approached, I felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. I felt guilty, like I was setting a trap. But then I would remember the feeling of standing alone at that party, and the guilt would vanish, replaced by a cold sense of resolve. This wasn't just about me and Maya anymore. It was a test of everything she claimed to believe in. And I had a strong suspicion about what the results were going to be. The day of the coffee meeting arrived. I felt a knot in my stomach the entire morning at work. It was a strange feeling, not just nerves, but a sense of profound finality. I knew deep down that no matter how this went, my relationship with Maya was over. This wasn't an attempt to fix things. It was an autopsy. I was just there to determine the cause of death. I left work a bit early, wanting to get to the coffee shop first, to get settled and control the environment as much as possible. I picked a table that was visible from the large front window, but also slightly tucked into a corner. It felt strategic, almost like setting up a chessboard. I ordered a black coffee, my hands feeling a little shaky as I paid. Every few seconds, I'd glance out the window, half expecting to see Maya walking by, half dreading it. Jenna arrived right on time, smiling. Seeing her was like a breath of fresh air. She was just so normal. No agenda, no ideological filter on reality. She gave me a quick, friendly hug and sat down. The conversation started effortlessly. We talked about our old summer job, laughing about the ridiculous manager we had. We caught up on what mutual friends were doing now. She told me about her job, the challenges, the small victories. I told her about mine. It was so easy. There was no subtext, no hidden meaning, no intellectual posturing. It was just two people connecting. I realized how much I missed this. How much of my energy with Maya was spent navigating her complex rule book and trying not to say the wrong thing. With Jenna, I could just be myself. We were probably about 20 minutes into our conversation when it happened. I saw a familiar figure walking down the street through the window. It was Maya. My heart started pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment of truth. She was looking at her phone as she walked, a slight frown on her face. Then she looked up, her eyes scanning the street ahead. Her gaze swept across the coffee shop window. For a second, it passed right over me, and I thought maybe she wouldn't see me. But then she did a double take. Her eyes locked onto me. Then they flickered to Jenna, then back to me. The change in her expression was instantaneous and terrifying. The neutral, thinking face she had while looking at her phone just melted away. It was replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell slightly open. She stopped dead in her tracks on the sidewalk. For a few seconds, she just stood there, frozen, staring through the glass. The shock on her face then morphed into something else, something dark. It was disbelief turning into white-hot fury. Her brow furrowed. Her lips tightened into a thin, hard line. Jenna was in the middle of telling a story and hadn't noticed anything. I tried to keep my focus on her, to act normal, but I could feel Maya's stare burning a hole in the side of my head. The coffee shop door swung open with a violent jingle of the little bell above it. I didn't have to look. I knew it was her. Her footsteps were fast and heavy on the wooden floor. Jenna stopped talking, her eyes widening as she saw Maya approaching our table like a storm front. 7, Maya said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was so full of ice that it cut through the entire coffee shop's low hum. Every conversation around us just died. I looked up at her. Hey, Maya, this is my friend Jenna. I tried to keep my voice casual, friendly. Maya didn't even glance at Jenna. Her eyes were locked on me, narrowed into slits. What is this? She demanded. Jenna looked back and forth between us, her face a picture of confusion. Hi? She offered weakly. Maya ignored her completely. It was like she didn't even exist. We're just catching up, I said calmly. Jenna and I are old friends. Old friends, Maya repeated, the words dripping with sarcasm and contempt. You've never mentioned her before. It didn't come up, I said, shrugging. Her eyes blazed. I can't believe you. I can't believe you would do this behind my back. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. Jenna, bless her heart, tried to diffuse the situation. She started to say, Look, we were just... Maya finally turned her head to look at Jenna, a look of utter disdain on her face. I'm not talking to you, she snapped. Jenna recoiled as if she'd been slapped. I'd had enough. Maya, I said, my voice firm now, you're making a scene. We can talk about this later. Oh, we will talk about this, she hissed. We absolutely will. She gave me one last look that was pure poison, then turned and stormed out of the coffee shop, the bell on the door jangling furiously behind her. The entire coffee shop was silent. Everyone was staring at our table. Jenna looked completely bewildered. What was that? Who was that? I felt a surge of guilt for putting her in this position. That was my girlfriend, I said, my voice low. I'm so sorry, Jenna. You shouldn't have been subjected to that. She was shaken. Is she always like that? It's complicated, I sighed. The rest of our coffee was awkward. The easy, friendly vibe was gone, replaced by this cloud of drama. We finished up quickly. I apologized again, profusely. She was nice about it, telling me not to worry, but it was clear the experience had been deeply unpleasant for her. I walked out of the coffee shop feeling drained. The experiment had worked. The results were in, and they were exactly what I had expected. When I got back to my apartment, the air was thick with tension. Maya was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, staring at the blank television screen. She didn't look at me when I came in. I closed the door, put my keys on the hook, and waited. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally she spoke, her voice dangerously quiet. I want an explanation. I sat down in the chair opposite her. I wasn't going to let her have the high ground. An explanation for what? I asked, genuinely wanting to hear her frame it. Her head snapped towards me. Don't play dumb with me, Seven. You know exactly for what. For that little performance at the coffee shop. Who was she? How long has this been going on?" "She's a friend," I repeated, "and nothing is going on. We were having a conversation." "A conversation?" she scoffed, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping her lips. "You looked pretty cozy, laughing, smiling." "I bet you were having a very stimulating conversation." She threw my own words back at me, the words I had heard from her after the party. It was perfect. She was walking right into it. Suddenly the tears started. Big, theatrical crocodile tears. "I can't believe you'd betray me like this," she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I trusted you. I really trusted you, and you just took that trust and spit on it." A month ago, this would have destroyed me. I would have been rushing over to comfort her, apologizing for something I didn't do, begging for forgiveness. But now I felt nothing, just a cold, clear sense of observation. I was a scientist, watching a chemical reaction. I waited for her sobs to subside. When she looked up at me, expecting to see a broken, apologetic man, she saw me just sitting there, my expression unreadable. It threw her off. "Aren't you going to say anything?" she demanded, the tears stopping as quickly as they had started when she realized they weren't working. "I am," I said calmly. "I'm just trying to understand something. Tell me, what exactly did I do that was wrong?" She looked at me like I was an idiot. "You went on a date with another woman behind my back. You lied to me." "I didn't lie," I said. "You never asked. And it wasn't a date. It was a coffee with a friend. We were just talking." "It looked like a date," she insisted. "How so?" I pressed. "Were we being overly physical? Were we touching?" "No. We were talking and laughing. Is that not allowed?" She sputtered for a moment. "It's the secrecy, the fact you hid it from me." "Let me ask you something, Maya," I said, leaning forward slightly. "The guy at the party, the one you spent the entire night with, did you tell me you were going to do that beforehand? Did you ask my permission?" Her eyes narrowed. "That's completely different." "How?" I asked. "Explain it to me. Use small words." The sarcasm in my voice was new, and it startled her. "I wasn't on a date with him," she shot back. "I was exercising my right to be a social, independent person. I was deconstructing patriarchal norms of ownership." There it was. The script. I was ready for it. "Right." I nodded slowly. "Your independence. So, you believe that in a healthy relationship, both partners should be free to have engaging, one-on-one conversations with people of the opposite sex, correct?" She eyed me suspiciously. "Yes, as long as it's platonic." "Okay," I said. "And you believe that any discomfort or jealousy the other partner feels about this is a product of their own toxic insecurity and possessiveness, right?" "Yes," she said, more confidently now, feeling like she was back on solid ground. "Then what's the problem?" I asked, my voice still perfectly level. "What you saw in that coffee shop was me, your partner, having a platonic conversation with a friend. If you felt uncomfortable or jealous, well, by your own definition, that's not my problem. That's your own toxic insecurity and possessiveness you need to work on. You shouldn't try to police my behavior just to soothe your own fragile ego." I used her exact words. Every single one. I watched her face as the meaning of what I was saying sunk in. The color drained from her cheeks. Her mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. She was caught. Caught in the beautiful, intricate, hypocritical trap she had built for me, and now for herself. Her entire philosophical fortress, the one she had used to belittle me, to humiliate me, to justify her own selfish actions, had just crumbled to dust around her. And she had been the one to light the fuse. She stared at me, her eyes wide, with a look I'd never seen before. It was a mix of shock, rage, and defeat. She had no rebuttal. There was no argument she could make that wouldn't completely contradict everything she claimed to believe. Her ideology was a one-way street, and I had just turned the traffic around. That's not the same, she finally stammered, her voice weak. You did it to hurt me. Did I? I asked. Or did I simply decide to finally play by the rules that you established for this relationship? The rules you lectured me about for months, the ones you used to justify flirting with the barista, the guy at the bookstore, and spending an entire party attached to a complete stranger while your supposed boyfriend stood on the other side of the room like a piece of furniture. I listed each instance, my voice getting stronger with each one. She flinched. The difference, Maya, I continued, standing up, is that when you did it for your own validation, for the thrill of it, and you used a cheap intellectual excuse to justify the disrespect. When I did it, I had a completely innocent conversation with an old friend. The only reason it hurt you is because you never actually believed in any of the nonsense you were selling. The rules were only ever meant to apply to you. You wanted the freedom of a single woman and the security of a committed boyfriend, and you thought you were smart enough to have both. I walked over to my closet and pulled out a duffel bag. I started taking my clothes out of the drawers and putting them in the bag. She just watched me, silent, her face pale. The fury was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. She was realizing this was real. What are you doing? She whispered. I'm asserting my independence, I said, not looking at her. I'm deconstructing this relationship, which I've come to realize is a toxic construct. My mental health should not be policed by your emotional insecurities. I zipped up the bag. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to get by for a while. I walked to the door. I finally turned to look at her one last time. She looked small. Stripped of her buzzwords and her condescending lectures, there was nothing left but a confused, selfish person who had been so caught up in her own game that she never realized she was about to lose. The sad thing is, I said, my hand on the doorknob, I actually tried to believe you. I tried to be the guy you said you wanted, but he doesn't exist, and you don't really want him. You just wanted an audience. And with that, I opened the door and walked out. I didn't look back. As I walked down the street, the cool night air felt amazing. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt light. It was the feeling of a massive weight being lifted off my shoulders, the constant mental gymnastics, the second-guessing, the feeling of being disrespected and then being told it was my own fault. It was all gone. It was just quiet. I understood then that my friend was right. I also understood something more. It was never about commitment. I wasn't afraid of that. It was about fairness. It was about respect. I wasn't running from a relationship. I was running from a rigged game. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I was finally free to go find a game where the rules applied to everyone.